Hello there, and welcome to another session solving tactics on chesstempo.com with the Advocate. This time we're doing 1500 to 1600 mixed. I think this series might extend for longer than the other series, simply from what I was looking at yesterday and how much energy it took me to invest in calculating the tactics so that I wasn't looking, or rather was forgetting, to look beyond the problem and what I would do in the resulting position. There were also some errors that I made, just not calculating out the problems fully. So 1500 to 1600 will be around for a while, which will be good news for those of you who are in that range. For those of you who aren't in that range, that's okay. Go ahead and take a look at the other series on my channel. Maybe you'll find something that fits you or pleases you better. For now, let's go ahead and get started. Black sacks here. Rook takes knight on h5. Do I have a sacrifice of my own? Rook takes c3 check. Pawn takes c3, queen takes c3 check, king b1, queen b1 mates. But what happens if he doesn't take? Rook takes check, king b1 directly. Then what? My queen can't get to a light square. So how do you continue from there? This looks like a promising move. Let's examine a couple of others. Let's see. I can always take here. Rook, 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 rook. 2 minors, 1 minor. So if I take, I'll be up the exchange. If I take, I will be up the exchange. I think I should just take. I think I should take on h5 instead of taking on c3 with check. This isn't checkmate. Pawn takes, queen takes is not mate. Queen h7 check, king f8, and there's no further check in the position. Yes, there is. Pawn takes, check, king here. Queen takes, check. King here. That's a perpetual. So pawn takes, queen takes, threatens perpetual. So I can play rook takes c3 check, king b1, and queen e5. B takes, and I can't take back. I can't take back because if queen takes c3, then queen takes f5 will be perpetual. Or he will take check, king here, queen takes e8 check, bishop back, queen check is mate. Small detail. So I could of course course, play bishop takes in this position. Pawn takes, queen check. But again, after queen b1, king b1, I don't see what's going on. You can play queen check, but knight b3, rook takes, queen takes. You're down a piece. Rook takes check, king b1. There's no way to follow up. No, I don't see it. I don't see it. So let's take on h5. Take on h5, queen takes h5, and now let's try to stop queen h7 check or stop the perpetual. For example, let's play queen e5. Pawn takes, queen takes, queen e5. Queen h7 check, king f8, and there are no further checks there. So what will black do? Pawn takes, queen takes, queen e5. Wait a second. Yeah, queen e5 covers the rook on e8. But is this a perpetual? Queen f7 check, king h8, queen h5 check. Yeah, that is a perpetual. So maybe I should give the f5 pawn. And after f5 check, I can play queen f6. So pawn takes, queen takes, queen e7, queen h7 check, king f8, queen takes f5 check, queen f6. And white has two pawns and a piece for the exchange, which doesn't seem very problem-y. It doesn't seem like the correct answer. Because there's definite compensation for white in that position. My open king, and he's not even down material. I have an open king, an isolated e-pawn, and he's won a knight and two pawns for his rook, so equal material, but I still have the defaults, the demerits of my position, the open king and the isolated e-pawn. Okay, what about rook takes c check, king b1, and then rook c2? Threatening rook b1 check, king a1, revealed check is mate. I considered this earlier, but I sort of let it to the side. Now he can't defend the b1 square. Yes, he can. with knight c4, but then I take the queen on e2. So rook check, king b1, and he has no way to defend the b2 square unless he moves his knight, after which I'll take the queen. So rook check, king b1, rook here. Now let's say a3, so that way after b2, a1, rook anywhere. Probably rook takes d2 check. He'll have the a2 square. But then I'm just going to windmill. Rook check, king b1, rook c2, rook c1, rook takes c1 as mates, rook check, king b1, rook c2. I think he should play knight c4, because otherwise, after any other opponent move, I'll win the whole army with check, then come back and try to deliver mates. Or just try to deliver mate directly. This is how you defend. Okay. I wasn't seeing queen b5. I didn't see queen b5. And if takes, then I will take the knight on h5, rook on h5. Alright, I didn't see queen b5. I feel a little bit stupid there. I need to be a little bit more searching in my defensive moves. Because that's a very obvious route. Very obvious. Mistakes that are made in this position. B takes c3. What? Bishop takes, bishop, I was like, B pawn takes, bishop takes c3. Yeah, not so good because I mentioned it here that I couldn't see what to do after this position came. And white is threatening the very simple checkmate. So I dismissed this. Rook takes d2 check. This is a very simple case of under-calculation because rook takes d2 check doesn't do diddly squat. Yeah, it just does nothing. How did I solve this problem? I saw that I could, with the long diagonal, and I decided to ignore this rook and see if I could put something together. And that led me to trying to find a counter sacrifice against this. So rook check, pawn takes, queen check, king b1, queen b2 mates. So you know that if takes, then checkmate. Now you need to prove that not taking also leads to a material advantage. With any sacrifice, you need to demonstrate that taking leads to an advantage and not taking leads to an advantage. He wants my c4 pawn. I can blunt him out, of course. d4, threatening d5, d2, so d3 threatening d2, d3, d3, knight e3, bishop takes, pawn takes, d2, rook b1, rook c1. d3, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook b1, d2, rook d1, rook c1, rook takes, pawn takes queens. If knight c2, bishop takes. If knight e3, bishop takes. So d3, rook b2, rook c2. If rook takes, pawn takes, c1 will queen, d3, rook b2, c2. If rook b1, then d2. No, that seems a bit premature. So d3, b2, rook c2, rook b1, d2, rook d1, c3. Bishop e2 would be a huge mistake. So the bishop can't move. This is a very long problem, but I actually think that d3 is the winning move. Yes. So now bishop takes, pawn takes. This is the line that I was calculating. It's one of the first lines that I looked at. Bishop takes, pawn takes, d2. And wins. Wait, huh? So you just want me to keep going? Fine. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't like the computer suggesting that you must continue. This seems way more complicated than it should be. Why did the computer not like bishop takes e3? Bishop takes e3. Now if pawn takes d2, and there's no saving move. There's no saving move here. So I guess the suggestion is that pawn will not take. He'll play rook b1, here, 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 and organize a defense. But after I come in, well, I suppose now pawn takes is quite potent, isn't it? And now we're opposite colored bishops. Well, wait a second. Pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes here. This is fine. This is fine. Pawn takes, pawn here. Rook can't take on d2 because it's pinned to the king. Yeah, I like bishop takes e3 more. It seems more clean. I didn't consider the mistakes. I'm sorry. Okay, what I'd like to play is I'd like to play rook takes g2 check. But let's say queen g5 and hit the rook and hit the g2 square. queen g5. If queen g4, queen takes e7. If rook takes f7, queen check, king d, queen d. I will have queen e7 covering everything. So queen g5. Queen g5, if g4 or g3, I can take with check and then mate. Or at least threaten to mate, so I will win at minimum 2 pawns. Queen g5, f1, I'm just going to take on e7. So yeah. Mistakes that are made in this position, rook, yes, yeah. So rook takes g2 check was definitely the first one that I considered, and you can see why. For example, one possible line, rook takes g2 check, king takes g2, pawn check, and if the king goes to the g file, queen check, and king anywhere, queen check. But then I decided that the king was going to escape. So I didn't like this. But it's definitely, you get some play for the sacrifice. And I was immediately attracted to it. But the simple fork is good and clean. Another mistake that is made is f3. f3 I also considered, but after g3 or g4. No, not g4, because after g4 there's rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes. But then again, I guess queen g2 covers everything. No, this is mate. No, it's not, because it's pinned to the king. Okay, yeah, so queen g1 does defend. So yeah, rook g4 I didn't like, but g3 seems to hold. So yeah, f3 was definitely a move that I considered. Rook takes g2 was definitely a move that I considered. But when I saw that they were not leading to checkmate, I decided on queen g5. That's how I solved this problem. I considered both of the wrong problems before I arrived at queen g5. So there are many moves. There's pawn takes. There's bishop takes. Now bishop takes, pawn takes, pawn takes. I'm threatening queen h5 checkmate. Queen h5, king g8, queen h7, king f8, queen h8 mate. That's a little bit distant though. So pawn here, pawn here. I could also just take here. There's no mates, there's no check mates. Which is a shame. I'm also seeing now that if pawn takes or bishop takes, there's all my queen's under attack, so that was the point. But I do have queen takes and then rook takes. If queen takes rook here, I'm just going to take on e8 and be a piece up. Queen here, rook takes, rook check, rook f8, king here, rook takes g1 check, king d2. And black has, what, a rook and a knight for the queen? No, just a rook. So there's no mate there, huh? Yeah, I guess not. So let's take the queen, then take the rook. Mistakes made in this position, h takes g6, yes. These people are all falling for the same mistake that I made, which was the fact that I just ignored my queen and was too concerned about the mating position. But I think that's okay. Everything that I have said is all my calculation. So of course I make mistakes in my preliminary calculation, but I'm not making decisions based upon those mistakes. That's the difference between someone who plays queen takes e7 and someone who plays h takes g. Another mistake that's made is queen takes g6. Queen takes g6, pawn takes g6, pawn takes... And I assume people think that there's a mate there, but there isn't. Anyways, next problem. This looks like checkmate. It's beginning to look a lot like checkmate. Mates on every square. So after king g7, how does he stop h6 mate? So I see that g7, bishop takes d5 would stop the mate, which is sad. So let's go for something more forcing, like h6 check, king takes g, then knight check, king f6. No. Huh. So king g7. And after bishop takes, the f4 square is liberated. So that way after h6, he can just run away to f4, and I won't have anything. I could prepare it. Like king g7, bishop takes, and then play e5. And I'm again threatening h6 mate. After king g7, the pin is liberated, so I can play e5. So let's say king g7. I definitely don't want to play e5 first, because then bishop takes with check. So king g7, bishop takes d5, e5, and now any resources to stopping h6 mates. White has no checks, no pawn moves help. No pawn moves will liberate the position, liberate the king. So yeah, after any third move, second move? Yeah, after any second move by white, I will mate. Ooh, Svidler. Svidler playing white, and Anand playing black. Wow. This is Peter Svidler versus Viswanathan Vishy Anand. Vishy with the black pieces. Incredible. What a game. What a game. Let's I want to have another look at this. I want to see the game. For those who are curious, and do tactics on chesstempo.com, this is problem number 103344. It's a very nice problem. All right, next one, last one. I didn't look at mistakes again. Stupid. So the problem here is pawn check, pawn takes. Any move that I play, there will be this pawn check. So knight d3, pawn check. Now if pawn takes, rook e3 check is very dangerous. So after knight e3, pawn check, I should play king g3. The queen should come to f5 maybe, but after knight takes, f3 check is not on, because my knight on e5 covers the f3 square. So I'll need to play rook takes f3. I can play rook f1, defending the f3 pawn. Or I can play rook c8, check, king f7, and queen f4, pinning the f5 queen to the f7 king. If h7 check, I can play, if king h7, I can play queen d3 check, or queen d3, pinning the queen to the king on h7. So that's if queen f5. So knight, pawn check, king here, knight takes, no, knight here, pawn check, king here, queen f5, knight takes, rook takes, and I saw that I could check and then pin the queen to the king. Now if other second moves by black, knight here, pawn check, king here. There's also queen here, queen here. There's queen d8, knight takes, pawn takes, king here, queen check, and then queen f4 should cover. Queen f4, king h3, queen g3, queen check, king g2, and I'm fine. Alright. I might have missed some critical defense there, but I've seen the pin line, and everything else seems to transpose to the queen e6 line. Yeah, so that's exactly what I saw. And I see now that I could actually probably play f4 in this position. I see that now. Okay, that's it for this session today. I'm gonna go ahead and get on with my day. Thank you so much for being here with me, for watching this video. I hope you learned something. I'm certain that I did. And you know, that was actually a pretty good session as far as calculation is concerned. I was pretty satisfied with the amount of calculation that I was doing. I was pretty satisfied with the resulting positions and how well I was calculating them. Yeah. So maybe we won't spend so long doing 1500 to 1600. Maybe 4 more videos because I want it at least 10%, and then we'll go ahead and move up. Anyway, until next time, take care of yourselves and good luck on your chess journey.